Hey everyone, welcome back. I am just doing a quick February reading recap and just going over the books I read. This will be a pretty quick video. I feel like I didn't get as much reading done this month as I wanted to. I think I just had a bit of a busy work schedule this month and things were just busy. I don't know. I read a decent amount. I think there's just a couple books that were slower for me. So let's just get to it. Let's pass more books. Let's pick up with what I was reading last month. I finished Dragonflight from the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey, and I'm glad I read it. I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars, giving it kind of a lot of grace because I realized that it's a much older book. It's kind of a classic fantasy, and so a lot of the way things are executed or the way things were edited it's kind of a different standard than we see in publishing today. So just a quick premise, you start off with this really intense prologue that says that, humankind settled in this new solar system on a planet called Pern, and things were going great until suddenly there was this other planet orbiting in the solar system who has a very erratic orbit, and it occasionally passes by Pern, and it's called the red star, and when it passes by close enough it can actually send these sort of parasite type organisms in threads through the atmosphere to the planet to try to settle, and they basically just eat everything and they destroy all organic life. So these people of Pern essentially developed dragons to help fight off these threads, because if you can burn them before they really delve into the ground too much and start eating up all your greenery, then you can keep things contained. So they developed these dragons that were native to Pern who could, if they chewed on the right rocks, they could breathe fire, they can teleport instantly if they have the right kind of thought command to go with it. But this book starts off where there's been a longer gap than normal in between these thread falls, and so people have started to think it's not really going to pass again. We don't really need to be prepping our dragons. Maybe the threat is just over, maybe it's just gone, and people are complacent. And so there's a few dragon riders who are like, no, we need to, it's coming back and we need to prepare, and trying to get everybody geared up for this next thread fall coming. Also, I've got to say, sorry if I don't sound the best. I've actually had a little bit of a cold recently, but I'm not doing too bad, so we're gonna keep going. So I think it was good. I was actually kind of surprised at the end with just how much I actually enjoyed it. I remember just kind of getting to the climax and feeling like, oh, they did it. I was just surprised at how satisfied I was. Just something about it just worked, and I really did enjoy the writing style. I really enjoy, once I get into kind of a headspace for a more classic writing style, I really do enjoy it. I'm really glad that I read it, because now I understand where a lot of people have gotten inspiration from related to that book, and I feel like it helps me understand the bigger picture of the fantasy genre and its evolution. And while we're talking about this, let me also say that I did start Dragonquest, the second book, and I think I got maybe 25-30% of the way through, and I was just not very engaged. I was having a really slow time getting through it. Not that it was necessarily bad, there was still conflicts in it, and I was also really appreciating again how I could see inspiration for other books in it, but I just wasn't very engaged. And so I thought, you know what? I'm not having the time of my life reading this. I'm just gonna drop it for now. And if I someday have the inclination to return to it, I will. But I don't see myself right now going back to finishing the series. So I'm not gonna force myself to push through it. Let's talk about another book that I actually didn't finish. So I started The Underworld by Susan Casey. It's I was listening to an audiobook, and it's basically talking about really deepest parts of the ocean that haven't been explored very much, and there's just so much life down there and so much that we don't know about the ocean floor, and talking about some of the earliest expeditions to the seafloor and kind of what scientists used to think and how much we've learned, and some of the crazy creatures who live down there, and even at one point started talking about like tectonic plates shifting and lots of things like that. And this is not my normal kind of book that I reach for. You might be looking at me like, you were reading that? Because I don't reach for nonfiction very much. But actually the reason that I did is because in my free time that I don't have, I am writing. I've been working very slowly on a world that it kind of, I wasn't inspired by Waterworld, that movie, but it's a little bit like that, where most of the surface of this world is just covered in water and basically just mountains peek up over it. And I've been thinking a lot about the kind of like sea life that I want to have in this world. And so my dad, who I've been writing with, he recommended to me that I check out this book to, get some ideas about the kind of crazy sea life that's actually out there in our world. And anyway, so I didn't end up finishing it. I again, nonfiction is not my thing, but it definitely got me thinking about some things. So I think I am going to come back to it at some point and try to finish it, because I think there's a lot that I can learn there that will help inform my writing. So it wasn't bad at all. I think she actually is a very engaging writer and has a lot of passion about her subject. So I'm excited to get back to it when I do. I just, I don't know, got sidetracked, I guess. One book that I really did finish and did really have a lot of fun with is The Secret Life of Miss Mary Bennet by Catherine Cowley, and I thought it was really well done. So this is the Mary Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Yes, you're thinking about that right. And this story it takes place about a year or so after Pride and Prejudice finishes, and so Elizabeth and Jane are happily married. Lydia has gotten settled down with Wickham, and Mary and Kitty are still hanging out. And Mr. Bennet dies, and during the process of like the funeral stuff is when the story picks up, and Mary is mourning her father and just finds herself suddenly involved in a lot of intrigue, and she ends up going off to supposedly be trained as a governess, but she's actually maybe being trained to be something more. And there's some mystery and not quite thriller, but suspense. That really is what it is. And it's not like a Regency romance by any means. And it was so well done. I think overall I was so impressed with the writing style, because I have tried a lot of like Regency romance books that just do not do it for me, because the writing style feels way too modern, and it always feels like a contemporary romance, just plain dress up, and it's just so painfully obvious to me and just doesn't do it for me. And this book's prose was so much closer to that classical style that I love, and it was also so well researched, and just it felt like I was so much more like immersed in the actual world, and things felt so much more closer to the actual like propriety of the times. I wasn't constantly looking at the book and going, are you kidding me? Because that's what I do when I read a lot of Regency romances. Another thing that I really, really loved about this book is that Mary is portrayed as a character who society at large, they don't really understand her, and she actually really struggles to understand them. And I think, I haven't like had this confirmed, but the way that Mary is portrayed, it feels like she is autistic, and that just shines through in the best possible way, where you really come to understand her and love her, and you start to really cheer for her. And I think it just fits so well. Even though we see so little of Mary in the actual Pride and Prejudice, like we come to understand her in a very new way in this book and come to like enjoy following her. So I think it was so well done. I did definitely guess some plot twists before they happened, but that happens a lot to me as an editor. I just kind of know what's coming in a lot of books like this. So that wasn't a bummer for me. And I think a lot of people would definitely still be surprised, or at least be a little more satisfied than I was. Even if you saw it coming, you would still be like, I guessed it, yes, and you wouldn't be like, totally saw that coming. I think it's a more satisfying ending than that. There were a couple of things that brought my star rating down just a little bit. For instance, I mean, I know I gave the prose some really high praise and said it was a lot better than a lot of other Regency romances that I read. And this isn't a romance, but just a lot of other books that have been contemporarily written but are set in the historical time period. I really struggle with the prose. And this one, it was so much better, but it wasn't like the level of, where did it go? It's way up here. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, or even where the Tamarar series. I feel like those two are still a step above The Secret Life of Miss Mary Bennet in terms of the prose just being so good like the classics, but it was still good. So that took it down just a little bit, that the prose wasn't like amazing. In just certain spots I would be like, ooh, that line sticks out. And I think the only other thing that really brought it down was that there were a couple of moments where I was like, but would Mary really do that? Or wouldn't she question this a little bit more? Was she a little bit too fast to accept that one thing at the end, maybe? Just a couple of moments where I was like, maybe that should have been just a little more developed. Right, but very small moments that I thought about that. And honestly, this is a kind of book where you do need to suspend your disbelief at least a little bit, because it's a little bit almost ridiculous to picture Mary trying to like spy on people and try to solve a mystery, you know? So there's I already kind of like forgave a lot just as a reader for that. And so I think a lot of it still works because you're kind of expecting people to come in with a little bit of forgiveness, you know, but there's still a couple moments where I was like, maybe we should think about that a little bit more. But overall, really such a good time. And I would definitely recommend it to people. I would actually really recommend to anybody who wants to write in Regency romance that you read that book and pay attention to how the prose is so much stronger than a lot of other Regency romance novels, and pay attention to the research. Oh my goodness, it was like so well done. Pretty soon after I finished The Secret Life of Miss Mary Bennet, I also picked up the sequel, which is The True Confessions of a London Spy, where now Mary is like officially a spy and she goes to London to go, sorry, spoilers, but she goes on her next adventure. And I'm not going to like go into real spoilers of what's going on, but again, I really had a good time with this one. Kind of similar things with the prose being great, the research being stellar. And again, the characters were engaging. I really loved how Mary got to like interact with her family and was trying to keep secrets from them, and that was like really high stakes, I felt like. And I really enjoyed just her interactions with her fellow spies, just really lovely. I also really, really just love that you can tell that there's a very like slow burn relationship building. And just it's great. I do feel like there was one subplot that was almost a little bit like too repetitive. Like, why couldn't we come up with something different for this side character to go through? But at the same time, it was definitely acknowledged at this climax of like, why does this always happen to me? And I was like, okay, at least you've acknowledged that. I ended up forgiving it. Again, occasionally moments in the prose would kind of like slip up, and but mostly it stayed fine. I feel like, again, there were certain moments where I had to almost suspend my disbelief a little bit too much in just like how far Mary was willing to go with her espionage activities. Not that she really did anything drastically, and she definitely took time to reflect on, you know, how many lies she was willing to tell her family and things like that. But it was just a little bit almost surprising, like how well she could act sometimes. And so I don't know. I'm torn because I like what the story is doing, but I'm also like, is this believable anymore? I don't know. But I did overall, again, have a really good time with this sequel. And again, I would still recommend it. So there's that. I also this month started reading The Small and the Mighty by Sharon McMahon, and I am not super far into it. I'm only like 3 or 4 chapters in. It's a pretty short book, but like I don't know why I've had a hard time like getting through it quickly, and I thought I would be able to like read it really fast. And it's not because I don't enjoy the writing, because I think Sharon is a great writer and really does have a great way of telling history in a great engaging way. But I was really surprised early on in like the first like story that she was telling. Suddenly we took this like big detour into like, and here's why the Civil War was definitely about slavery and not just about like states' rights. And I was like, okay, like hit me over the head with your political arguments, okay? And not that I want Sharon to like stand down and not talk about hard things, but I remember just being like, and do I need to know all this to understand the story that's happening? Do I need to? And in the end, I was like, I didn't need to have that whole discussion to enjoy the story. I really didn't. And not that I disagreed with any of it. I totally agreed with her on every point, and I felt definitely like educated, but I was also like, I just felt so like, and why did we take this detour? It wasn't necessary. It wasn't. So I just keep finding these moments where I'm like, I'm surprised that an editor left that in there. Just some of the editing that I noticed, I'm just like, I'm surprised an editor left that line that way. And maybe it was that Sharon chose to change an edit and leave something a certain way. But there are a couple things that I'm like, oh, I'm okay. So I've been surprisingly a little bit let down by it, but I will say that overall definitely very heartwarming stories. Very so far all of the characters she's really talked about have been women who have been very hardworking and selfless, and it's been definitely inspiring in that way, but I don't feel like it's quite been life-changing yet. So I'm really excited to hopefully get to some new stories that I don't really have like an inkling about yet, and just I don't know, I'm still kind of waiting for the book to like really floor me, I guess is what I'm expecting, and I haven't quite had that moment yet, but I feel like it's probably still coming. So I'm gonna work harder this month to actually like sit down and read this, and like sit with it. I also started State of Fear by Michael Crichton. This is a book that my dad recommended it to me, especially because there's a lot going on in politics right now, and my dad was just talking to my family about this and how, one of the greatest tools of politicians is fear, and they often try to use fear to motivate people to vote a certain way and go for certain policies. And so I just felt like I wanted to see where that conversation was going, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's a pretty long book. It's about I guess this island is trying to sue the United States because of climate change. Tides are supposedly rising, and this island is in trouble because of the rising tides, and so we're gonna sue the US for their contributions to global warming. Some people are definitely involved with some suspicious things, and other people are really like good intentions. They believe in climate change and global warming, and they're really trying to get this lawsuit to go forward and make some change. And other people are totally just like riding it, and they don't care about environmentalism. They're just like in it for whatever they're gonna get, and there's very interesting like details coming forward, and just it's all very like complicated, and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of characters, and I'm only like 25% of the way through so far, but it's definitely been very interesting. And like already so much has happened, and so I am very interested to see where it's gonna go. So I'll keep you updated on that in my next month's recap. But I think that's it for February, and I'm excited for March and what it will bring. I would love to hear about what you are reading and what you enjoyed in February. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought, and let's pass more books. See ya.